Welcome to the Educational Leadership Podcast with Principal JL, the place where school leaders recharge, rethink, and remember their purpose. If you're a superintendent, assistant superintendent, a principal, assistant principal, dean of students, teacher leader, or a future administrator, you're in the right place. Here we mix practical strategies with real conversations, a little wit, and a whole lot of purpose. Because leadership isn't about the title on your badge, it's the influence you carry every single day with your teachers, staff, students, and families. Our mission is simple: to inform, inspire, and to help you lead with purpose. To give you tools that actually work, stories that spark reflection, and ideas you can use the minute an episode ends. So grab that caffeinated drink, a notebook, and your growth mindset, and get ready to level up your leadership one episode at a time. Because around here, we don't aim for perfect. We aim to be 1% better every single day. Now let's get to the episode. Have you ever thought about what it would take to consolidate two high schools, but not just any two high schools, but two rival high schools in a way that brings the community together? Well, today's guest has done exactly that. His name is Derek Cantrell, and he serves as the principal of Alleghany High School in Covington, Virginia. He was recently named the 2026 Virginia Outstanding High School Principal. Throughout his career, Derek has become known for building strong school cultures, developing instructional leadership, helping schools use data and artificial intelligence to improve teaching, learning, and finding ways to reduce administrative workload so leaders can spend more time with people. Now, let's get to our conversation with Derek Cantrell. Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. Today, I am bringing in the 2026 Virginia High School Principal of the Year, Derek Cantrell. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Really appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit of our story here at Alleghany High School in Virginia.
And I'm excited to bring you on because I'm really interested in that story. I've kind of read up on you a little bit. I'm just like, well, I'm really excited to hear how you did it. But we'll get into that eventually, right? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start you off with the same question I ask everybody on the show. What inspired you to become an educator?
Well, education's always been a part of my life. I grew up, my mother was a teacher. She taught kindergarten and pre-K. So I kind of saw that impact from her on a daily basis. And my uncle, who also raised me, was a shop coach. And then he got into a principalship in the technical center and finished up in that realm. So they both were big impacts on my life and really kept, I've kind of went to school my whole life. I like to say you go from being a student to going to college to coming back into that, and the things that they did, and you could see the impact that they had on others throughout their life and their journey definitely pushed me in that direction. And I just, try to be that role model and the person that they were. I still hear things from how they impacted folks when they were in school and they coached them, and it definitely is pretty inspiring. Both of them have passed away, sadly, so I don't have them with me to this day, but they definitely still impact the person that I am and in my journey.
Awesome. Now, Derek, what subjects did you teach, or what did you teach? What levels? And could you tell me scenarios or just some stories about being a teacher that helps inform your leadership today?
Well, I started as an elementary physical education teacher, so total utter chaos, I guess you would say, as you have people, getting people to sit down and take instructions on a line sometimes is a challenge with pre-K and kindergartners for the first little bit. But, I think along the way you learn that being flexible and being kind is super important. I remember, starting off one cute little story. As I was standing in the hall in elementary school, I was out standing in the hall and the kids came by and they started calling me Jim. And I'm like, why do they keep calling me Jim? because their teacher told them they were going to gym today. So I'm Jim within that part. So that was really neat. But I think as a teacher, I had the unique opportunity to work at a lot of different schools. Being an elementary PE teacher, sometimes you're working in small areas, 2 or 3 different schools at a time. So that I think that really helped me see what different leadership was and be able to pull from some of the strengths that those folks had and kind of help mold the leader that I wanted to be as I moved forward. But I think that, as a teacher, being able to know that you make an impact, and kids definitely know that if you're willing to go to bat for them and build those relationships, they're gonna go to bat and be successful for you. So I think that that's super important, and relationships always come first when you put the money in to invest it in kids. In that, that good things are gonna come from that part of it.
Awesome. So PE teacher, elementary side, that's like herding cats is what I've heard. Now, I have a physical education background as well. I taught math mainly for 11 years, but I did teach some PE, and I do have some experience teaching the littles in PE. And yes, it's like I say, it's like herding cats. So it's very interesting,
That's right.
how to work with those kids. It's rewarding, but it's tough.
Controlled chaos.
Yeah, there you go. Control chaos, another way to look at it as well. So I do appreciate that. Now, how many years did you teach?
I taught for 10 years. I did started off in elementary, had a little bit of middle school early on. It was a K through 7 school where I started. Then I came back to the county that I'm in, that I grew up in, and taught elementary K through 5. Then we had a school close in our county, and then transitioned to middle school. Always coached high school throughout the time with baseball. So did have my foot in the door a little bit in the high school world, but high school definitely wasn't the part that was, hey, I want to be a high school principal. It was, hey, I'd like to really be an elementary school principal along the way. And, that's never came about to this point. And I really enjoyed the high school piece of it for sure. And probably, wouldn't really choose to go back at this time with how much things happen in a high school and the impact that you have seeing kids walk across that stage at the end.
You bet. No, and I kind of like knew like through my field experiences that I'm not going to elementary. I mean, I have bits and pieces of it in my career. I know I was a 712 principal before coming to Hastings High School here. So there was a K-12 district on one site, so I was able to go over to the elementary side. Sometimes I have to cover for the elementary principal, and so it's just a different world over there. The best part about the elementary kids was I go over there, I was a rock star. They gave me hugs. Mr. Lennon was the best. I was like, oh, this is I can see why people would love to be elementary, but secondary is where my heart is. That's just where my jam is, right? That's what I love is the secondary side. And you're right. I mean, when you get to see the kids graduate, you see that kid that struggled
Right.
all the way through and they make it across the stage. That's like a huge celebration. So people don't understand that unless they've actually done that and
Oh, yeah.
seen those things as well.
I mean,
And so
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Seeing that kid, like you said, that struggles, that you're in here the week of graduation, finishing up testing, and they finally get it, and just the excitement and the high fives and that, it's so worth it at that point.
You bet. No, that's part of the job that I love. And the people don't realize in education, you don't see the fruits of your labor or the rewards of your work until years down the road
Right.
because you don't know how you impact kids in the time being. But down the road, you may get that letter, you may get that email, get that phone call. A kid may just stop into your office and said, "This is how you impacted me. Thank you." Like I've had those similar things happen to me, and that's what makes this job worth it for sure. And
Absolutely.
so, what was it that said, you know what? I'm no longer going to do this teaching thing. I'm going to go over here, become an administrator. What is the story? What got you into administration once you realized that's the path you wanted to go?
Our division at the time was they paid for our classes in the master's program, kind of got into it. Hey, it's a free master's program. I can have that endorsement. It's an extra $3,000 stipend a year. If I get into leadership, so be it at any point with that. But I had some folks, some of the principals that I worked for, I think saw in me that I had leadership capabilities and pushed me in a direction to try things that were outside of my comfort zone, like leading a reading club, being an RTI chair, and some of those things I think really helped push me to being a leader and going into that. And I think it was great. Our division gave us the opportunity once we were in the leadership program to go and basically fill in for principals when they were out and substitute. So you got a lot of different experience at a lot of different levels. And one year I had the opportunity to fill in about the last 6 weeks of an elementary school, one of the bigger elementary schools in our division, and had to do all the observations, all the end of the year stuff. And I always think the beginning and the end of the year are always the most difficult parts of the year. If you can get through those, good things will happen because it's just so fast. But being able to have those folks believe in me and that really kind of pushed me there. Like I said, I always hoped to be an elementary principal, interviewed for an elementary principal job and kind of a high school one at the same time, and was, hoping for that. Had the belief of our city schools that was a part of this journey with the county, believing in me to be the principal at Covington High School. And that was an 8 through 12 high school, kind of like you mentioned, 7 through 12, little unique, about 350 kids. So had that opportunity, and I was the final principal of that school for the final 7 years. And that building opened in 1939. So long history there. So that was kind of my journey going from elementary to middle school, getting the opportunity to get in that program and train and learn from leaders in our division, and then jumping to the city schools as their final principal for 7 years at the high school.
You bet. So, what are some lessons you learned when you were the high school principal for Covington?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
I think when you jump into situations, I always think put people first. Relationships matter, and they really help move the work the right way. And culture doesn't happen by accident. I think if you don't go in and be yourself and be the leader that you are, don't try to be somebody different. That if you don't set that culture, it's going to create its own. And I think that trust is built over time, being consistent, being the person that you are. Don't let leadership change you. Go in and continue to be upbeat, kind, I think are important for me. And I always think celebrate as much as you can, recognize people. How can you really just recognize and uplift the people in your building for the good things that they're doing, and just show them that you really value them and they care, that you care. But super people driven, super relationship driven. And I think that really helps move the needle and get you going in the right direction.
You bet. And then, so you're there for 7 years. So, what was the journey like going from that position into now you're going to be in charge of a new high school and you're consolidating two rival schools? So, what was that like? What was some of the background? What was the reasonings for the consolidation? Because I like to learn from that, because
Okay.
I actually was a principal of a school that consolidated literally 6 communities total, but it was 6. They went to 3 and then they went to 1. But and so I just like to hear those backstories. So what was some of the reasonings for consolidation, and what was that journey like from learning about it to going through the process, and what did you learn through that process?
It's something that's really been in our community talked about for about 40 years. I remember as a student in this community, I was a student in the Alleghany County public schools growing up, and every so often it would come up for a vote in our community for consolidating schools. come up for a vote, it would get voted down. It'd come up again in 5 to 10 years and get voted down again. So it's something that was pretty regularly talked about throughout my childhood and even being a teacher. And what drove it was declining enrollment. We were a railroad town early on, so that once the railroad left, some of the jobs left, and we have a paper mill, the hospital, and the school are the biggest employers still to this day. So declining enrollment, getting tougher to find teachers to fill positions within our community, I think were some of the driving forces of that. Both schools, like I said, Covington was built in 1939, so long-standing traditions and pride. Alleghany High School was built in 1963, and as I say with that rival part, there was a cup for the football games, the Brackman Cup. So every Friday night in the fall, the whole community was there. You win that football game, it carries that energy and pride for that whole school year throughout that whole piece. So just a lot of people that were super prideful, a lot of traditions, and we really had to find a way to bring all of that together and truly make it better together with that approach. So that's a little bit of that story. And the actual vote happened right out of COVID on the first day of school. So you have all that excitement of school. You know there's a vote that evening, and you're unsure. The Covington community was quite vocal about not wanting to consolidate. So that happened that evening. Actually, the school boards voted, both local school boards and both local governments. So it wasn't a vote to the people. And that vote happened. So you kind of get that grieving, that gut punch for you're going to lose your high school and your school community. So how do you work through that in the next couple years and still move forward and put your best foot forward and honor those kids that are the last graduating class of 2023 was our final year of Covington High School.
So if I understand you right, the Covington High School dissolved and they moved into the Alleghany High School.
Yes, Covington High School students came to Alleghany. The Covington High School building is a current middle school right now for everyone, so that building is still being used. But yeah, our kids came down. It were the Alleghany Cougars. It was the Alleghany Mountaineers and the Covington Cougars. So we kept the mascot from Covington. We blended the colors a little bit so that we could keep some of that, some of the things that came from both school systems. So that was kind of intentional to keep some of that along the way instead of start brand new and fresh.
So, I mean, that's really kind of cool how you did that. You were able to kind of keep some of the history and traditions alive, but you're able to, it sounds like you did some compromise in there between the two communities and schools to try to bring this together. So, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of challenges to that. So, what would you say was some of the challenges to bringing these two high schools that are rival, and kind of give people an idea, like how big is this community, and how big is the school like combined together?
All right. Covington High School was about 350 kids, 8 through 12. Alleghany was sitting around 500. So combined, we're that upper 700s to 800 as a high school. And now it's one high school in our county. So we did have the two with the city part. So we came together, and the challenge was you have that pride and traditions that's built over time. And instead of focusing on what we couldn't control, we listened, we communicated. What are people excited about? What are people concerned about? And then tried to answer those concerns before we started day one of school. And we knew we weren't going to make everything perfect, but we tried to honor traditions that happen in both schools, whether it be, a capping ceremony at Covington High School versus a expo day or putting hands on the wall that seniors did. So we looked at what's the best things that both schools did that we wanted to continue and carry forward, but also how could we create new systems, new things that could make us better together with that part. And we truly focused on that relationship piece and being consistent throughout the part and communicating, because we felt like if we over communicated, that would be a great strategy so that people knew what was happening. They understood the why. And because if you don't communicate and you kind of put yourself in a bubble, narratives and things are going to start themselves. So you're better off to over communicate on the forefront of major change. I think super important. But we definitely had folks in the community that were against the consolidation. So we had to make sure that we were upbeat and positive as much as we could be. We owed it to our kids and our staff to do that and put our best foot forward with that part of it, and truly know that bringing resources of two schools with staff, students, and all, that we can offer kids more. We can be fully staffed. We can have more dual enrollment classes, and truly be better together as one school.
All right. And I love the tagline there, the better together tagline, to get people together, get them on the same, team and working together on that. Now, when it came down to it, you were the Covington principal at the time when this all happened. So
Yes.
what was the story? How did that evolve to where you were going to become the principal of the consolidated Alleghany and Covington together? What was that like? Like, was that something you knew a year or two in advance that was going to happen? Like when you knew the consolidations would have happened, what was that timeline like? Like, what did that whole process look like from the time that you find out to we're opening up the door to consolidation and going in our new direction?
So the 22-23 school year, the divisions consolidated. The high schools were still split for one more year. 23-24 was the first year of the combined high school. So in the fall of, I guess, 22, that is when we had two high school principals, two middle school principals. One of our CTE director was retiring. So everybody had the opportunity to apply for any of those positions. So you could, apply for all of them. You could apply for that, and other folks could as well. So you went through that process. I was hired in October 22, the year before, kind of about a year out before we started. So still doing the job at Covington High School, was actually the athletic director at that time. We had somebody that was out, so doing that and planning for consolidation. So there's a lot of stuff happening at one time for me for that year. One thing that I think I did that really helped is create a culture and communication roadmap to make sure that we hit the right stakeholders and all stakeholders along the way with communication. What are you excited about? What are you concerned about? Making sure that we announce coaches and interviewed coaches along the way at the right timeline, putting out our mascot, unveiling a mascot, our colors, all the different things that go into creating that excitement and that pride, and keeping staff informed about who's going to be the department chair, what are the logistics of the furniture getting here. So a lot of communication just to make sure that everyone was in the loop. We valued everybody's opinion in scheduling, and really helped build those relationships before day one.
You bet. So what would you say, what are some intentional leadership strategies that helped you build trust? Because I think, you're still doing the job at Covington while you're doing all these other things to get ready for the new position at Alleghany, but yet you still have to build trust. You got to be intentional. You got to have unified two schools that are rivals. So what would you say helped you do that?
We did a lot in the spring with staff, for one, and students before we started and throughout the summer. So we had student and parent advisory meetings throughout the year and got together, talked about excitements and concerns, tried to answer the concerns. Some of them, I remember a kid I had in 11th grade at Covington was like, I feel like I'm going to be a freshman as a senior starting at Alleghany the next year. So we ended up doing some shadowing events for our kids. Our leadership students would go down and shadow. They would come back, and then they would get to tell our grade levels about the day, and we had conversations about that. We did some open houses in the evening where families could come down and tour the building in the spring before the next year. We got our kids on our leadership and advisory teams together to talk about those traditions and how we could merge and kind of create the best of both worlds. How can we be better together? So what are the things that we need to do and think about? We created, from talking to our kids and our staff, summer events that we did one about every other week throughout the summer, where kids could come to the school, they could win prizes. We had food, we had games, we had movies, just being super intentional about that relationship piece. On the staff side, our division had mingle events. So we got together during the afternoon for PD, basically relationship building. We did tours of Alleghany High School, Covington High School. We brought in food trucks. We built relationships. We talked about the next year. We talked about goals and aspirations and what we wanted to be and what our focus would be, and really just dove head in. And our staff couldn't have done better. I mean, I like telling the story. A couple weeks into school, I remember walking down looking for a teacher on our second floor and walked by, and all the daggone teachers on the second floor were eating lunch in the same room. And that wasn't forced. That was something that they still do to this day. And that just shows the culture that was created early of just making sure we value people and put those relationships first. But I really think the over communication and listening was super important. We put people before the logistics. The logistics were a little bit of a nightmare. We started later because you're bringing furniture from all over the place. You're having to paint the school different colors. You're having to change logos, put new things in, and get ready for that. But we kept people updated. Of when we put signs on the door, we made a Facebook post and showcased it. When the lockers were painted Carolina blue, we sent it out. Hey, look at this. This is moving forward. We're so excited to be the Alleghany Cougars. We start school in 2 weeks. Can't wait to see you. So the more you can celebrate and showcase the things that you're doing before day one, create those wins before you start. And I think it really helps create that momentum.
Awesome. I really love that. I really loved how intentional you were before you even got the building open, all the different things you were doing just to keep people together, understanding like you're looking at the pot, like this is happening if you like it or not. Oh, like there's going to be some apprehensions, there's going to be some concerns, and so you're navigating that as well as. But think about all the newness and the excitement that comes with the consolidation and bringing everybody together when it comes to that. So I love hearing how that because a lot of schools are consolidating, throughout the country because of drop in enrollment. They still happen today, and it's just really interesting to hear how you navigate that because I'm pretty sure there might be some people out there getting ready to navigate something similar to that. And so, as you think about and you look back on, this consolidation and bringing everybody together, what is something that you're like? I mean, there might be a lot of things you're proud of, but what is something that you would say, yeah, that was like a very proud moment in that transition?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, amazing educational leaders. If you're finding value in this podcast, learning new insights, getting inspired, or just nodding along thinking, yep, I needed that, then why keep it to yourself? Share this podcast with a colleague, a fellow school leader, or a teacher that is inspiring into leadership. Send them a link, post about it, or just casually drop, hey, you need this in your life the next time you see them. Let's grow this community of game-changing educators together because great leadership isn't a solo act, it's a movement. Now, back to the show.
The first thing that comes to mind, I remember the faculty meeting at the end of the first year and just sitting down and coming into that and talking to our staff about we did something that was 40 years in the making that people doubted could ever succeed. And we knocked it out the park. We came in, we put people first in relationships. We were, instructionally sound the first year and improved from where we were. We didn't have the situations, the people being upset with each other from both schools and fights and things that you would think could possibly come from that. So I think really looking at the end of where we came, the work that we put into to making it happen, building all that excitement and success, and our teams were successful, our school was successful, and you wouldn't have known that we were a consolidated school. So just sitting in there and telling those folks that, we've done something that has been talked about before some of us were born, and really did a great job of putting people first. And we celebrated that, and we communicated. And like I said, if you don't create that culture intentionally, one's going to be created for you, and it might not be the one that you want. So really, work with your folks on what you want to be about, and do it. And I think if you put people in that part of it, it's going to set you up for success before all the other pieces. So, any leader that's going through change, value your people, listen, good things come from that.
Awesome. Now, you're also known for instructional leadership. So, what does great instructional leadership look like in today's schools?
I think in today's schools, as we go into this next part, I think with some AI, that I like to think that AI can give us some time back to do people over paperwork. I think great instructional leaders are present. They're in classrooms, and as a high school principal, how hard that can be if you're not intentional and you don't find things that you can take off your plate by some means, whether it be AI, whether it be your weekends and different times. But it's so important to be out in your building, be in classrooms, understand teaching and learning, and really be a part of the process where you're not simply just out there to be an evaluator. You're working with teachers, giving them suggestions and ideas, and really being that team. And I think that we did learning walks this past year. I think we're super great for our admin team. We got out, we focused on a lens with engagement, with rigor, and went in as a group, all of us, and looked at what we were seeing, came out, talked about it, and tried to tighten up what we were, our observations and our feedback. So that was really cool. And it was really neat to get the data from that and dive into it. And I think it's neat in our school. I had an English teacher actually come in yesterday, and they've already picked a book that they want us to buy for a book study. And not something that, hey, you got to do a book study, that they're jumping out, selecting those. Our math department has done that for the past few years as well. And it's great that we've created a culture that we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to move the needle with that, and everybody is good with that. And it's really cool that folks pick something that you don't have to, as an administrator, say, hey, you're doing this. So that's really cool to see. So I think those are some things that are important for leaders. And just, in a high school, it's a little bit different. You're not always the expert as you walk around to different classrooms. You go into a calculus class, I doubt, unless you've taught calculus, you're not the expert going in there. So you definitely have to rely on your folks and their expertise, and listen to them, because they can help with scheduling, they can help with ideas. And don't ever feel like you can't walk up and ask for an opinion, because it's super important in this leadership stuff that we do. Value the people that are the experts in your building.
You bet. I appreciate that. I mean, it's something that, I try to tell my staff, like, when I come in to just, hang out, watch, whatever, like, I may not understand what you're teaching sometimes, but
Right.
I guarantee you, good teaching is good teaching no matter what you're teaching. And so my goal is to help you get better no matter what or where you're at, and ask questions, why did you do that? I'd really like to know, just because they are the expert. Like, high school is content driven. So yeah, they're going to be the experts in their area. Don't ask me to teach an art class. Don't ask me to teach, English, or, certain. I could probably teach history though. I mean, I could probably. I like history, but there's just some things that I'm like going, yeah, no, I leave those guys doing that. And having great staff to work with is a bonus. I really like the fact that you have staff that are going like, hey, we want to do this as a book study. Like, they're finding their own PD and they're driving it. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be like, we got to get better and this is what we need to do. And sometimes I think as leaders, we can tend to fall into that. Like, I don't want to make my staff do something that I'm not willing to do myself,
Right.
or I haven't done myself. And so, I've thought about, do we do a book study or not? I mean, I've done one in the past as a teacher because I had to, but I didn't know. Like, I'm like, I always go back and forth. Should we do one with to be good. I don't know, but at the same time, I do try to guide them and help them where they're at so they can get better. And I utilize AI to help me with that because AI will sometimes help me brainstorm things that I don't think about. And I think people don't realize as an instructional leader, when you're out there, you can really only go off of your past experiences to help other people, right? And if your past experiences are limited, you're going to be limited on how much you can help. So that's why it's really important as leaders to always continue to learn new things, get ideas from other people, read books, listen to podcasts. Like there's so many ways we can do that so we can fill up our toolbox so we can go, aha, I know how we can fix this, right? Or how we can get better at this. And I utilize AI in that capacity to help me brainstorm ways I can help my teachers get better in their instruction. And I think the last couple of years of doing that has really helped develop some of the teachers that I have in my building. So you also like to use AI to streamline and do those things. So how do you use AI? How do you see it benefiting administrators as we move forward?
Like I mentioned earlier, the people over paperwork, how can we utilize AI to automate some of the repetitive tasks that we do as leaders that allow us to be more visible and more into our school? So some things that I've done, I really like, I sometimes I get going down a rabbit hole and just get out of control on creating things and making stuff. So that's one of my kind of passions there. I like to tell the story. I was a computer science major for one day. I went into college to be a computer science major. I sat down. They started talking about HTML and JavaScript, and the guy was like, "If you don't know these, you shouldn't be here." And I was like, "I was hoping you would teach them," but that wasn't the case. I did not know them, so I was a one-day computer science major. But with AI, you can do a lot of that stuff nowadays with creating and making things of your own. So that's something I feel like I've getting back into the computer science dream that I had. So working on some things there. So I like to create custom agents, and some of the things that I've done, if you don't pay for Chat GPT or don't have the plus version, highly encourage any school leader to do that. That allows you to create custom GPTs. And what I mean with that is you can put in your documents, your knowledge, your forms. So say for instance, we use one for formal observations. We put in our district formal observation, our summative, our walkthroughs, all of the different things that our division has. But then we also put in some of the PD that we've had as a division that helps us with those observations. So we've had Strong and Associates in that focus on focused feedback that's actionable to staff. So that's in there. There's other trainings that we've had. So we take notes, we go in, we take notes, you come out, so you can take your notes that are very descriptive. You don't have to worry about putting it in that long summative form. You just take the notes with bullets, you come out, you hit enter, it puts it into our formal observation comment and makes it actionable that teachers can use that from. So that's super super time saving, about 45 minutes sometimes an observation. It took me to take my notes to put them into the comments in the way that I wanted them to be. So that's one really cool tool that I have that I've created. We use other ones with data that you can really do some really cool things with data analysis with AI. Definitely got to be careful with putting, you don't want to put student things in through that. So you could take that out, or you could put in some student numbers from your school that aren't identifiable there. So there's ways to work around that. But we've used Julius AI to look at question by detail reports so that you can look at the item, the question strand that was asked, at what level, how many times we got that right, at what percent, color code it, give it back to teachers. What are your strengths and weaknesses? And what are some things that we can do to help move the needle? You can do that for formative, for benchmarks, for SOL end of the year assessments, and be able to give them actionable feedback quickly within that part. I also like to give teachers some tools for lesson planning to help them, like you said, brainstorm, create those engaging hooks, and make sure that we're putting discourse into the lessons. But a neat thing we did this past year is an assessment and rigor check for assessment. So it took one of our earth science teachers used it pretty religiously, put in an assessment, it checks depth of knowledge, it checks rigor, it checks alignment to make sure that assessment is meeting that strand of the SOL. And he improved by about 25%, making sure that kids see depth of knowledge level 2, 3, and 4. But the goal, like I said, is to utilize AI to take away some of those tasks. It's not replacing teachers and leaders. It's helping us spend more time where we need to be. And I think that, jump out there and try some stuff. And I've been working in Codex the last couple of days and got a little bit out of control trying to create websites and operating systems. And it's been a lot of fun. And I think I'm going in the right direction, creating a kind of an all-encompassing thing for our counselors that take our SOL grids, can verify SOL scores from reports that you put up, and then to be able to print out sheets that check credits, graduation requirements, and even print out a thing like here's for the kid with where you're at and what you need to do. So kind of in the process of building that, and it's been a lot of fun the last couple of days.
Awesome. It sounds like you are having a lot of fun inventing and just brainstorming. If you have people out there that are kind of like, I know about AI, I know it's helpful. They might be they're curious, but might be a little hesitant. Where would you encourage them to start?
I think you start small. I think you mentioned it. If you get stuck as a teacher or a leader, brainstorm. It's the best brainstorming partner there is. Put something in. Hey, I'd really like to do this. Could you give me some ideas of how we can make that happen? And boom, there's ideas for maybe a special event, an activity, a lesson, a hook, any of those things. And if you don't like what you get from the first response, I always think the follow-up question's more important sometimes than the initial one. Ask those questions as you move, and it'll get you where you want to be. You can create all kinds of things. You can create, I've got into where I just communicate with the chat bot in the regular chat in ChatGPT. And then as we have a conversation, be like, hey, I'd like to create this to solve this problem. Let's talk through it. I want to be able to create something to solve a problem like lesson plans. And then I want it to do this. It needs to check Virginia standards. We want to make sure we have this in it. And then just have that communication. And at the end, create that script that I can then put into the custom bot, and you're done. So you can kind of just brainstorm with it for what you're wanting to do, but start small, ask questions. It's great for brainstorming and creativity. If you get stuck planning a lesson or an activity, hey, what are 2 things I could do to really make this engaging for students? And it'll give you some really cool ideas. And then once you get one, hey, create this activity for me. Give me the station cards, give me the scaffolds, give me the lesson extension, and boom, you got a pretty dynamic lesson in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know we have teachers, our staff does use AI. We do have a program called Magic School AI where it does help streamline and help them, be able to differentiate instruction, but also scaffold things much easier, much quicker. And the number one thing was how much time they saved and how much time they got back. And they're not doing it 10 o'clock at night the day before, they're just like amazed on like how accurate it is. And it's even getting better as we get going. Like the more people use it, the better it's going to get with things. So let's talk about like aspiring administrators. So if someone's out there like, hey, I'd like to be an administrator someday, what advice would you give them?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, educational leaders. You know how we tell our students feedback makes us better? Well, same goes for this podcast. If you've been getting value from this podcast, please take 60 seconds to leave a quick 5-star review. This review isn't just a pat on the back, although I appreciate it. It helps other leaders find the show, join the conversation, and grow right along with us. More reviews equal more reach equal a stronger community of game-changing educators. So hit that review button, drop a few words, and let's keep making educational leadership better together. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I think as you go into leadership, be yourself. I think it's super important. Don't try to be someone else to be a leader. You got there for who you are. I think that's super important. You don't want to be that leader that gets power and changes who they are as a person. Build relationships first, but before trying to make major change. Don't jump in day one and go, hey, we're going to change everything. Listen, I think if you go in, you have pre-meetings before you start. What are you excited about? What are you concerned about? What's two things we're doing great? One we could do better. If everybody says the same thing on something we could do better, you got an opportunity for change. Make sure that you listen to your staff, ask questions like we talked about earlier. You have some great people in your building that are experts of a lot of different things that can really help you be successful. And it's okay not to know everything. You can find that answer, and you're not expected to know everything, especially like us in a high school. You're not the person that knows everything of every corner of every inch of the building. You have other people that you can delegate things to. I think that's super important as a leader. You can't do it all yourself. Involve your team, work with your team, because that's super important as you move forward, because those are the people that you want to set up to take over for when you lead, and you got to give them those opportunities to be leaders. So I think those are some great things as you're coming into a role to value and definitely impact your success rate.
Man, I love every single one of those. Very good, advice for people that are wanting to get into this role. And I always say, get into some like leadership roles before you try to become an administrator. Like, be a department head, try to help with some committees. And I've had some people do this. They come and ask me, what can I do to prepare myself to become an administrator? And I said, well, these are some things you can do. And I let them know. And lo and behold, they do it. Like, it's like good, because now you have something to speak to. Because if you don't have leadership opportunities to speak to before you go out and get that interview, it's going to be really hard for you to break into administrator if you don't have some background, some knowledge, some things that you have already done that you can relate to that role if you haven't been put in those positions yet. So I would encourage anybody to talk to, other administrators on how to set yourself up to be able to step into that role. You're not going to know everything, like you said. You never will. You learn on the fly half the time, most of the time. But at the same time, if you have some sort of experience that you can speak to, that's going to go a long ways to somebody that doesn't. So I think that's another piece there. I like to I'll just throw in for free. Now, so, you wrote a book, Better Together. What inspired this book? And then what do you hope people take away from it?
The book's not just a total story of the consolidation. So it's a little bit of the history, going through some of the things that were important in our community. It talks about some of the things that we did in our podcast here about the going up to the first day of school, what was important to build that plane before we got there, creating that plan without a plan type of part there. And then the really hope was it's more of kind of a leadership playbook. There's a lot of different systems and culture things that we've put in place to recognize, acknowledge, and extend the good things that people are doing in our building. So the hope is there that folks can look at that. They can find things that they can implement and tweak and adjust and put into their building, like our Cougar Code, our Cougar Scholars Club, a lot of things that just find ways to tell stories about our kids and our staff and just continue to uplift them. So it's kind of a playbook, a story, and something that school leaders or any kind of leader going through change could listen to and read and do a book study with. There's questions in there. If there's a leadership team that's looking for a book study, there's questions in there that you can discuss about going through major change and how systems are important to build that consistency, and then lessons that we learned from going through major change that we did. So the hope was to tell the story, but also give leaders an opportunity to find things that they could take away from that journey, and also some systems that we put in place that they can implement in their school.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a really good book for people to go ahead and grab up and to kind of learn some things, because I'm big on systems. I like systems, and I just don't think you can run a high school without them. If you're running a high school without a system, I don't know if you're doing very well. I might need to check on you, make sure you're okay. Uh, but systems are huge, and there's a lot of different ways to get the results you're looking for. And it's just always fun to learn how other people do it. Because really, the systems we have in place at my high school, it's kind of a hodgepodge of other things. Like, hey, I took this from here and we took something from here and input it, because you're not, you're looking outward sometimes to bring something in that might help you. And another school may be doing something that you never thought of, and how does that work for you? Oh, maybe it could work for us. And then what we do is we tweak it for us. And so we've done that several times within the last 4 years of me being the principal here at AC High, to where this was our problem, and we brought in a collaborative effort team. I mean, it wasn't just me over there making decisions. We came together, we researched together. We go, hey, we think this is going to work, and then we come up with the system and we implement it, and lo and behold, it has worked every time so far. So I really enjoy just learning how other people do things, and because there might be something you do that I might be able to use. So that's what I enjoy about learning from other people.
I mean, I enjoyed listening to you, like I mentioned earlier on Tony Catani's Proud Principal podcast, and the systems. I'm like, he's one of my favorite guys to listen to. With all, like we've put things in from good standing programs. We got a huge impact this past year by putting in a good standing program that focused on attendance and tardies and discipline. We saved about 3,000 days on attendance, lowered our chronic absenteeism by 9%. 70-some students were less chronically absent. And so that was super impactful. We called it a Cougar code, and students, if they went above 12 tardies or 7 unexcused absences, went out of Cougar code. So they lost athletics, activities, trips, proms. But as if they were working towards the recovery, they got those back. So as long as they're going to recovery sessions, they were able to do that. So like you said, those systems can be super impactful, from things like that to all kinds of different ones that are out there. And definitely, borrow, steal, adjust, tweak, and utilize the great things that people are doing around this country, because there's a lot of them happening.
Yeah, you bet. And those are some of the things that people are tackling, right? Chronic absenteeism. How do you help people understand that school's important, and showing up, you need to be there so you can learn. It blows your mind on how many times that like people school's not that important. Well, it kind of is important. It's more important than you realize. But then I think when you raise the bar and you raise the expectation, not just for your students but for your staff, they go and hit it. Like, they go hit it almost every single time. And I have to remind my school board of that sometimes. Like, hey, we're going to raise the bar on here, but every time as a principal that I have done that, we've hit it. And why should we settle down here when we know our kids need to be here? So let's go get it to this point, because we all know if that's the minimum, they're going to at least hit that. And then anything over that is gravy, right? And so if your minimum is higher than most other people's minimum, then you're going to be achieving at a higher level than most other people. And I don't think people understand that concept sometimes, but that's kind of how I've done things the last 8 years as a principal and the last 4 years here. So
I went through that a couple years ago. With it, we had kind of two different systems for graduation. And we had the bar at, you had to meet the requirements. Wherever the bar is, like I like to say, you're going to reach it. So make sure the bar's above where you want to be so that you can be successful. I'm like, I really liked hearing that. Cool. It was awesome.
Yeah, because we just recently raised the graduation rates at our high school, because our bar was here, and I said, no, we need to go here, because we're expecting you to take, in this case, 250 credits, right? We're expecting you to take that, and I expect you to pass every class. Why would I have you take more credits than you actually have to graduate? That didn't make sense to us. Well, we also know that we run into this problem. I don't need that class to graduate, therefore I'm going to skip it or I'm going to fail it. Well, that doesn't help the teacher, doesn't help you. I mean, it doesn't help your overall GPA. I mean, you're hurting yourself more than anything. But the kids know how to work the system. And if you could close the loopholes in those systems, you're going to be much better off. And so that's kind of what we're actually doing right now. We're in that work right now to where we're closing that loophole. And once we close that loophole, then you can no longer have that excuse. So we're trying to take away those excuses as well. And so wish us luck on that. We still got a few things to iron out on that, but it has been approved. So we are going to graduate, or we're going to increase our graduation rate to 250. Now the question becomes exactly how are we implementing it, right? And so I have a way I want it to go. Other people have ideas, but we're right now working through that, and hopefully by the end of July here, we'll have it solved. So
Awesome.
it's just the collaborative effort. We just got to figure that out. I think I know which direction we're going to end up going, but at the same time, it's just we need to talk some things out when it comes to that. I want everybody to feel good about how we're going to implement it, and so they can support it in the public as well as within the school as well. So, man, this has been a great conversation, Derek. What is coming up for you? What do you got coming up? I know you do some speaking engagements. You're going to travel around, do some of that. So let us know what you're up to. How can people connect with you and follow the work that you're doing?
All right, yeah, it's getting to that, kind of that busy season. We just got back from going to our state principal association conference, and it had kind of one of the final recognitions there for the state principal of the year. It was really awesome and cool for that honor. And next week, going to present at Making Schools Work, doing a presentation on culture, and then one on people over paperwork with AI. Got a presentation at the National Rural Education Conference in San Antonio in October, and then ACT Vision for CTE with some work that we're doing with a school store with our SPED and CTE students. So a lot, getting out there and trying to go out and share what we're doing, trying to work on possibly some AI workshops with some school divisions. And basically you can follow me on LinkedIn or X, Derek Catch 19, I think on both of them. Just created a website. Like I said, I went down to my Codex rabbit hole. One thing I came out with is I created me a website, bettertogetherleadership.org. It has on there for anybody a bunch of the custom agents that I've created, whether it be for observations, rigor checks, lesson alignments. So I encourage anybody, they're free, hop on there, check them out. It also has some other things that we're, doing throughout there. So that's kind of a cool resource hub there. So that's out there and available as well. But definitely, if anybody has any questions or want to reach out, definitely let me know on any of those platforms. Be glad to help with anything from AI to school change and culture.
Awesome. Well, and this is what I'll do, Derek, is I'll take, you got to send me that website so I can put it in. I'll put your website, I'll take your handles and I'll put them in there so people can easily just click on and find you and connect with you much easier that way in the show notes that I do for every episode. So I'll do that for you. So when people are listening to this episode, they can scroll down, click, and boom, they have access to you. So that's something I could do for you to make sure people can easily find you, for those conversations and to see what you're going up to. One of the things that I'd be interested in is checking out your website and checking out those GPT, bots that you created. I'm going to probably go look at some of those because some of them sound pretty good. My friend, Principal Mo, created one for me for my observation for my school. Oh, I got something, I can do this, and it works fabulous. I'm like going, I didn't know you could do that. So her and I had a conversation about a month or two ago now about those things. And so, yeah, she's huge into AI, and she does a lot of great work with AI too. So I really appreciate you putting that out for people to work through, because a lot of the things you're talking about are very practical things. People need to help streamline their work, because if you're not using AI to streamline your work, you are spending a lot of time on things you don't need to be. You're right. And so try to streamline as best you can. You want to get some of that time back so you can do the work that you're meant to do, which is to be with people and help people, not do paperwork all day long. So get rid of some of that paperwork and get out there and be with your people as much as you can. Derek, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Just, thank everybody for what they do. Definitely listen to these podcasts. Get out there. It's the best PD in the world. You're learning from folks all over the country and the great things that they're doing. And like Jeff said, utilize those programs, those systems, tweak and adjust, because it can move the needle in your building and make a difference. So just highly encourage leaders to listen to podcasts like this, to learn from people in the field. And if you're not somebody that goes out and talks about what you're doing, go do it. If you're doing something neat, we all need to hear about it, because it's important to grow this profession and learn from each other. So highly encourage folks to get out there, go present at conferences, share on podcasts, the awesome things you're doing in your buildings.
Awesome, Derek. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
What a great conversation with Derek Cantrell. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Please like and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss another impactful episode like this one. Please feel free to reach out, especially if you know somebody or if you would like to be a guest on the show, so we can share your impactful insights about educational leadership. All you have to do is you can email me, or you can just hit the text me link in the show notes. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening. Until next time, be curious and 1% better. Thank you for sticking around to the very end of this episode. I hope this podcast brings value to you as an educational leader. I would invite you to share this podcast with other educational leaders, or maybe that inspiring teacher who would like to be an educational leader someday. I would also invite you to subscribe and to follow this podcast so you can get the most recent updated episodes when they drop. I would also love it if you leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars, because that would make this podcast more discoverable to other educators like yourself. You can also follow me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Threads, and Substack. All you need to do is look for Principal JO, and boom, there I am. This is where we can continue the conversations from the episodes that you have enjoyed. I am so thankful for you guys for listening. Until next time, always be 1% better.